Good morning and welcome to the Tech Lab Brief. Give us 30 minutes and we'll give you the most relevant updates and tech news happening both in and outside of BK Tech Labs. We are your hosts,
I'm Ethan.
and I'm BK. So yesterday's PM brief, unfortunately, was not recorded. So there will be no VOD, but I did enjoy the content and I wanted to redo that. And I guess on that note, we'll jump right into the Apple files lawsuit against OpenAI. The suit accuses OpenAI of systematically stealing Apple's hardware trade secrets to jumpstart its own upcoming consumer AI hardware business, representing a massive public rupture between two companies that were recently high-profile partners. And it's hard to really think about, like, why this is so important. Is it?
I mean, if we're talking about the leading figures in any industry, then I believe it's important.
Hmm. I feel like while this is still happening, still very relevant, it's so fresh. I mean, I remember it was Friday evening that it just popped up, and
Mm.
yeah, let's dig into a little bit more of the details of this lawsuit because there are some very interesting claims being made, and yeah, Ethan.
Right. So we're starting with Apple versus OpenAI show and tell interviews. The lawsuit accuses a former Apple VP of product design and now OpenAI's chief hardware officer of instructing Apple employees during job interviews at OpenAI to bring in actual parts and unreleased physical prototypes from Apple to show his team.
Yeah, how do we prove that? What's the evidence?
I haven't really looked at the case, so I wouldn't know. But
It's not really our jobs, is it?
well,
Yeah, we want to cover much more interesting stories. This is the claims are made, and it's obviously Apple has their legal team, OpenAI has their legal team, and you know they're gonna do what they do to both support and refute the claim, and it's gonna be up to our public officers and our tax dollars supporting them uh, to see who's telling the truth and moving on. Apple claims OpenAI actively coached departing Apple employees on how to manage their exits to evade security detection, instructing them to stay employed at Apple as long as possible to continue accessing internal databases.
it's very like strange. Like it doesn't seem very ethical from a average person perspective. It might be different from like I guess the tech world in Silicon Valley is pretty.
There's a certain amount of how do we take these difficult stories in some level, like no one really wants to hear about them, but or if they're too negative, it's like I don't want to be bothered with it, but find the right angle and find the right perspective to say that this is harsh realities of the world, but we just got to keep going. And also, we're figuring out together what can we do? What can we, you know, what are the right positions, mentalities, and action at the end of the actions that we can do to do something about this? And talking about something like some two crazy companies like Apple and OpenAI going at it in legal battle can feel so far away because what can we do about it? So there is something about leadership and something about trying to do this the right way. Because one thing about this Apple story that I want to shed light on, this Apple versus OpenAI story, is that, you know, Apple stealing hardware trade secrets to jumpstart its own upcoming consumer AI hardware business. As far as we know, OpenAI hasn't gone into hardware yet, right? So everything they've been doing, all their investments, or this poaching of employees from Apple, was them trying to get into hardware.
I mean, if we're talking about tech world, there's so much money in there, and people can get a bit blindsided or like narrow-minded, focusing only on the money. And I think that's kind of what's happening here, where OpenAI is so invested in trying to win the AI race and develop their own hardware, this consumer AI hardware, that they've, in my opinion, done something unethical, which I guess according to you is something
Allegedly.
allegedly did something unethical, which is apparently common practice in Silicon Valley tech world. And I think it's it's up to ultimately up to the officials and the judicial system about what happens in this lawsuit, but it appears that Apple is taking the proper steps in filing a lawsuit and alleging these claims to hopefully get some compensation for what lost value they got or whatever value they lost after all these employees were poached.
Mm. It's a great take. But you made this last point about compensation that the Apple might be trying to get over this lawsuit. And what's interesting is that this lawsuit actually doesn't list that doesn't have a dollar amount. They're not trying to claim for any amount yet. So I think when there's like a deposition and the case continues, there'll be a number labeled for all this for what Apple is saying that OpenAI allegedly did. But it looks like Apple is actually looking to try to prevent OpenAI from getting into the game, the hardware game.
Mm.
So yes, that's just a little
That's another consideration that we have to take in.
right. Yeah, and I think, and on that note, today is the knowledge segment. What is the knowledge segment? Every day during the brief, we're going to go through some idea or concept or some topic that we might find interesting or related to the day's news or our day's efforts. And it's going to be technical and today, or it could be, and we want to focus on a more of a technical topic. And we're going to use one of our flagship apps called ReChat. It's an AI chat replaying app. And we're going to use our two brains. We're going to ask the internet what it knows about this topic. And we're going to kind of go through it together and have a little bit of a vamping session to dig deeper on this concept. One of our fundamental principles at BK Tech Labs, known as collective intelligence. And on that note, today's knowledge segment will be on
The history of Apple.
the history of Apple. So we have ReChat right here. As you can see, this is our ReChat app. You can see we have these various topics that look like videos, a video version of the AI chat. And if we click into the Apple's personal computer history, we ask Grok to go through the history of Apple computers. And we'll speed this up. So because obviously, oh yeah, this music as well. Sorry, to work on that. Good first task. That's a thing in engineering world, is when you first join a company and you get used to the code base, you have a first task that you would do just to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go through this really fast. Just skim through it a little bit and then see if there's any topics that you think might be interesting to go a little deeper into. And I guess I'll narrate a little bit as we go through. The founding in the early years was in the second half of the 70s with Apple II. I think this was an incredible. Wayne sold his 10% stake of Apple computers for $800. Goodness. We're gonna pause a little bit and let that sink in.
10% of that
Sink in. $800. Focusing on the money. I mean, $800 was a lot in the 70s. No, not a little before. So, and then the 80s happened, and 80s was an interesting time where they actually ended up struggling a bit, and it led to Steve Jobs being kicked out of Apple in 1985. This gentleman by the name of John Sculley was a CEO at the time. There's a whole history behind that. And then we enter into the 90s, and we can skim through this real quick. Maybe it's good to just keep the line on what we're currently discussing. So in the 90s, they were really, really, really struggling. And there were really interesting initiatives they did, like the PowerBook. They started doing laptops. But there's a long running joke about this product called the Newton PDA. The Newton was actually the first iPad.
Oh.
Yeah, they tried to, it was an early tablet-like device, but a commercial flop. So there's a lot of industry amongst the O-heads, a joke about the Newton. And then they moved into the Power Macintoshes and the Power PC. Um, and yes, this was the era when this is an interesting term that Grok used. I mean, maybe it's been used before, but first I'm hearing it for me, Wintel, which is just Windows and Intel put together. So the 90s, and then in the late 90s, this is the historic moment when Apple brought Steve Jobs back by buying out the startup that he made after he left. So they kicked him out. They kicked him out, and then they said, well, they kicked him out. He went to build his own startup for 12 years, and they bought that back for $400 million. That's legend. That's the stuff of legends, man. And like, forget about the money. It's just the money isn't. The money does show the measurement of just how impressive of a feat that is. But the feat in and of itself, you know. And I want to go back to this next thing because it's not like this wasn't just like a pump and dump thing, you know. This wasn't just like he built this thing and just dumped it. Next technology, so Next invented this operating system called Next Step, and it ended up being, well, just long story short, it's still used to this very day. There are significant bits of Next Step technology software, like code, that exists deep in Mac OS. So that's some food for thought. Wow. So late 1990s and 2000s. This was when things started to turn around. Steve Jobs came back.
Renaissance.
The Renaissance, right? And we start seeing products that we're familiar with. iPod. I mean, maybe we're familiar with the Macintosh too. It's the OG Macs. So Macintosh, the Mac started getting revitalized. iPod, and then yeah, the modern era and Apple Silicon, which was, you know, that's the good stuff. So we'll finish this up. And Tim Cook. And I do want to kind of highlight the brilliance of Tim Cook as CEO of Apple for 15 years. Like 15 years is incredible. And I do, you know, tip my hat to him for his tenure, because there's this gentleman by the name of John Turnus who is set to succeed him towards the end of the year, which September 2026, we all know. New iPhone coming out. Isn't that interesting? I mean, that's just become such a milestone month. If you're in Apple world, like, you know, like September is along new Apple products. That wasn't a thing when I was growing up. Okay, so then if we go back to the key themes and impact here, I think these four concepts, these four ideas really they get me a little bit. And in fact, I think, well, let's just go through them real quick, right? Innovation, design philosophy, challenges overcome, and legacy. And for me personally, as we build BK Tech Labs, and you know, we have this great team of younger interns who are like helping to build this company. These are the principles that really that I really look up to. You know, innovation, design philosophy, simplicity, integration, user experiences, challenges overcome. I mean, like this, and then of course legacy, and that legacy is just the natural fourth word that comes out of just looking at these three words, and just looking at Apple as well. And if we finish off the rechat here, Apple computers evolved from garage tinkering to sleek, powerful devices central to a multi-trillion-dollar company. For deeper dives, well, thank you for that. that was really good. That should have been the closing point, but I know Grok wants to keep chatting with us.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so, you know, no shade to OpenAI, because what they've done in the last 10 years is incredible.
Mhm.
But if I don't want to dig in, I just don't want to go into the lawsuit too much. I just want to try to maintain this ongoing respect for these very influential figures in the tech industry that have enabled us to do something like this. Thank you for everything, Apple. Thank you for everything, OpenAI. Please figure it out. And now, a minute of Zen. Yeah, I realized that I pushed a commit to our Zen app to make a sound when we hit the end of the timer, and I didn't push it.
Oh,
I made the commit, didn't push it. Got to commit
well,
and push.
yes.
All right. And on that note, that brings our briefing to an end. We hope you enjoyed the cast as much as we've been preparing it. Please catch us for the next one at 5 p.m. today. As always, we'd love to know what you think and hope that maybe one day you'll consider supporting us as a member as well. Let's lock in. Have a great day. We'll see you at 5.